In this episode, we take a look at some more forgotten castles, fortresses, outposts, even a train caboose that helped to make your playtime awesome in the 1980s. So, stick around! Hello fellow dorks and dorkettes, and welcome to Nostalgia Syndrome. My name's Rob, and in this episode we will be taking a look at more forgotten playsets from the 1980s. This is the 5th installment, and believe me, I have plenty more to come because there are so many forgotten gems within the playset world. Like I've explained in past episodes, things were so much different in the 1980s than they are now. Nowadays, you can't find playsets for anything. I mean, every once in a while you'll see a rare one pop up, or, the Imaginext stuff. Awesome playsets, but not really action figure playsets that we knew, loved, and grew up with. Back then, upstart companies and brand new action figure lines would hit the ground running with some really awesome playsets. Some of them very intricate, some of them very simple. But all in all, they were very awesome. So, without further ado, let's go to number 1 on the list. Number 1 on the list has a very long and unique name. Now, the name would suggest that this toy has an awesome origin story. Unfortunately, I can't find any info on that story. And there is little to no info on the toys anywhere online. They are online, but there's not a lot of chatter about it. The toy line is Mantec, made by Rambo in 1983. Before I get too ahead of myself and talk about the Mantec toys in detail, here is an awesome commercial.
Mantec Action Figures, the interchangeable system of robot warriors, weapons, and support equipment. Mantec, all with interchangeable parts. You can create your own robot warriors, limited only by your imagination. Aquatech, Solartech, and Lasertech battle with evil. Megatech, Terrortech, and Doomtech, the interchangeable robotic villains. Mantec, adventure beyond the human experience. Mantec robot warriors each sold separately, only from Remco.
Now, Mantec was a modular action figure, if you will, kind of like Centurions, but it actually predated Centurions by 2 years. So Remco kind of was on to a great idea. Unfortunately, it didn't go anywhere. Now, these figures were astronauts, spacefaring folk that had different holes within their armor that different weapons, wings, backpacks, things like that could plug into. And they had awesome oversized helmets. You know I'm a sucker for action figures with helmets. Now, the playset, if you will, was called Battle Station Laser 2. Yes, 2. Was there a Laser Battle Station number 1? I have no idea. Now, I can't find any info on if there was a Laser Battle Station 1 or Battle Station Laser 1 or however you want to say it. But the name would tell me that there was a 1 at one time and maybe it was blown up by the bad guys. I don't know. We'll get into the Mantec toy line in a future episode of Plastic Ghosts. But for now, we're here to talk about the awesome playset. Now, Battle Station Laser 2 was a 3-tiered playset that offered such things as weapon storage, a command module, and a launching station. Now, it looks super awesome, and there's plenty of places to plug in different weaponry and other things. And it has some really neat armaments around it. And like I said, it's 3 stories, so that's really awesome. You gotta love playsets that had many tiers, because that kind of stuff just unlocks the imagination, and you could play with this with any toy line, honestly. I mean, it's very nondescript. I mean, granted, the weapons are very specialized for it to clip on and stuff onto that and the characters, but you could make do, throw a couple of those weapons on there. I mean, they had little posts, so I'm sure, I don't know, but I'm sure you could get your Masters of the Universe figures to hold on to them or something. Now, one of the biggest mysteries to me that I've uncovered while looking for this toy was on the package, it has a long list of features that it has. A laundry list of features that are down on the left-hand side of the package. And I cannot find a picture in crisp HD in order to read what all these awesome features are. So, all I can say is they're probably awesome, and one day I hope to see this package in real life and I can read what they are. Until then, I'll just keep searching online and see if I can uncover any more awesome gems about this playset. And like I said, we'll talk about the actual action figures themselves in a future installment of Plastic Ghosts, because this is a forgotten toy that I remember coming out, and I remember being super excited for it, because I'm a big fan of Remco. I mean, most of my toy shopping was done at Kmart, which Remco ruled, because they're priced a little bit cheaper than the other guys. So I was able to get a lot of Remco stuff growing up, but never one of these. Number 2 on the list, it doesn't have as unique or punchy of a name as the first one did on the list. This one was called the Command Outpost. Yes, pretty simple, but the toy line itself wasn't so simple. It was Aerators, made by Hasbro in 1987. Now, Aerators was a very small-scale toy line. The figures themselves were only about 2 inches tall, and they lacked any real posability. They had a minor amount of detail to them, but when paired next to something like figures in the Mask toy line or Dino Riders, they had a lot to be desired. Anyway, with those small figures, what the selling point of Aerators was their vehicles. So you had to have a small action figure to go with this vehicle to keep the price point kinda down. Now, there were some really neat and imaginative vehicles to go along with this line, but now we're talking about one of the playsets. There were a couple in the line, and we'll talk about some more of them further down the road. But we are talking about the Command Outpost. Now, the Command Outpost was the good guy hideout, the Command Outpost, for lack of a better term. I mean, that's what the name is. Anyway, it looks like something more akin to Dune than anything else, with its awesome architecture and landscaping around it of rocks and desert-like material. Now, the playset itself didn't really offer that much, other than that it's a cool hangout for the good guys, some missile firing aspects of it, and a cool little avalanche feature so you can bury the bad guys in rocky debris. Like I said, the architecture of the outpost is pretty neat looking and really reminds me of Dune. Now, I have to say, I haven't seen the new Dune movie, so I don't know how the new one compares, but I'm going by the David Lynch classic that I grew up on. Now, the playset came with 6 of these little action figures, so that's pretty cool, and came with a boatload of missiles that you could fire out. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that the missile firing feature was done with like an air bladder that you would squeeze and it would shoot. I don't think it was spring activated like some of the other toy lines that we've seen throughout the years. Now, Aerators has a pretty big fan base online. I found many fan pages and websites dedicated to it. It seems to have struck a chord with many a people that grew up in the 80s. Now, I was kind of aged out of the toy line by that time, and I was still collecting my, die-hard things like G.I. Joe and Transformers, but Aerators kind of slipped through my fingers. Now, with all those cool websites and stuff out there, did I do any research on this toy? No, not really. But I can tell you that in the toy line mythos, it is the world of Airlandia. There's good guys and bad guys. The bad guys have taken the air, and the good guys want it back. So they do that with different air and ground vehicles and battle each other. Sounds like a pretty basic and interesting storyline, but like I said, I was kind of aged out from it at the time. But I can look back at this playset and say, that's pretty cool looking, and it's an awesome forgotten playset from the 1980s. Number 3 on the list is from a toy line that I talked about in passing way back when in Toys I Wish I Had as a Kid number 2 or 3. I forget which one exactly. But if you want to go search that out, please do. Because I talk about in loving detail how much I wanted the Get Along Gang action figures. Now, this is the playset that went along with those action figures. It's the Clubhouse Caboose. And if you saw the cartoon, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, the Clubhouse Caboose was made by Tomy in 1984. And unfortunately, yes, I rave for the action figures, but this was actually made specifically for the small PVC figures. Now, you didn't get a lot of playability with these figures because they're just molded in a certain pose or in the middle of an action, but this offered some really interesting playtime for those PVC figures. A lot of figures like that at the time didn't have any play sets or accessories to go with them. They were just made to sit on a shelf and look at, or if you're really hard up like I was as a kid, to play with them. Now, the Caboose itself has wheels and it can roll. And it came with things inside of it like a seesaw, a little merry-go-round thing, and different playtime, playground type of activities for the figures. It had really neat details, you know, a large sticker that made it look like wood planking that they were walking on, and inside of the Caboose itself, it had great molding to look like that wood as well. Also inside of the Caboose, it had a little second story with a little elevator system that kind of connected to the smokestack on the outside. It had some really neat features, like I said, for PVC figures, which didn't really get a lot of love and attention back in the day. Oh, and it also came with one of those, and I do not know the name of it, those little train car things that you would do this with and can go up and down. You know, like those two-man little, I don't know, little minecart type of things. It came with one of those as well. So, I mean, like I said, PVC figures didn't get any love and attention, but the Get Along Gang ones surely did. Now, number 4 is a play set of a character of a toy that I just unboxed and reviewed very recently, and that is Indiana Jones. This is from the Kenner toy line, released in 1982, and it is the Well of Souls. Now, granted, it's not a super forgotten playset, but it's one that no one really talks about anymore. Growing up, I wanted the Indiana Jones action figures so bad, but I never got any. The Well of Souls was like this unattainable Ark of the Covenant for me that I just wanted but never was able to get. Now, what makes this playset so rad is it has some really neat, intricate design work to it. It has really cool, like, golden lattice that goes above the playset, a really cool rocky floor, and a breakaway wall with a mummy, just like in the movie. It also comes with a ton of little rubber plastic snakes that can scare the crap out of Indiana Jones. And before I forget, it comes with the item that everybody's searching for, the Ark of the Covenant. You too could have a small-scale, face-melting, godly artifact at your own disposal. How awesome is that? For a very simple playset, it has some really nice details to it, like I explained with the gold lattice above it, the breakaway wall, the mummy. It has torches, it comes with a rope, and dozens of snakes to thwart Henry Jones Jr. himself. Like when I did the unboxing of the Walt Disney World Indiana Jones figure that I got, that too came with a little base that has a lot of similarities to this, mostly the sandstone blocks and cool little base. So it would be neat to get this Well of Souls playset and kind of incorporate it with that new Indiana Jones base that I got. Granted, the Indiana Jones figure I got was 7 inches, not the 3 3/4 inch figure scale of the original figures, but you could get that base to work and it would be an even bigger and more awesome playset. Now, number 5 comes from 1985 and made by Coleco. It is the Rambo Savage Strike Headquarters. Savage was the villain team within the Rambo toy and cartoon universe. And the Savage Strike Headquarters was pretty darn awesome. Now, this guard tower-esque playset had some really neat features, but it came with a boatload of accessories. Like I said, this was marketed as Savage, the villain team's headquarters, but honestly, it's very nondescript and can be used by Rambo himself or any of your other wartime action figures like G.I. Joe or Sergeant Rock or Bronze Bombers or whatever. Heck, even He-Man might want to pick up an M60 and go to town on Skeletor. This would be the place for it. Like I said, I mean, it's pretty awesome in its detailing of a really neat, guard tower. It sits up a couple stories, has some, combat netting that you could probably climb up and down, but it comes with awesome accessories like ammo boxes, a boatload of different guns and grenade launchers, has a turreted machine gun, binoculars, and it comes with a communications and radar array, little computer room to the side. On top of all that, it had a little winch on the side that you could lift ammo boxes up to the top to help supply the machine guns. And it has a really neat base of details of sandbags and rocks and dirt. I mean, what else do you need for an awesome Army-esque playset? Now, I was a huge fan of the Rambo toy line, and I was starting to get a little bit older at the time, but Rambo was still rad. I mean, the movies were very grown up and aggressive, so that made it feel like the toys, I could collect those with no problem because they had that aggressiveness in a cartoony manner. But like I said, this playset, this headquarters, would be super awesome with any of your Army-esque action figures, mostly G.I. Joe. Granted, the scale is off because the Rambo figures were much bigger than the G.I. Joe figures, but I mean, it's a guard tower. It can be a little bit bigger. I mean, there's things to scale. Of course, the weapons and accessories wouldn't fit your G.I. Joe figures, but the actual playset itself, you could use that for a multitude of different things. Like with a lot of these playsets, I look back at these with 45-year-old eyes and an imagination of what I could have done with them as a kid and what I would do with them now if I had them in my collection. Now, the Savage Strike Headquarters goes for a very hefty sum online, which you would expect because of just the Rambo line didn't really go anywhere. I mean, it had a cool cartoon attached to it, awesome movies as inspiration, but the toys kind of fizzled because Coleco itself as a company sadly fizzled. So I assume this inflated price is because of the rarity of it and just how it didn't go anywhere. But like I said, I would love to have this in my collection now. Granted, it would take up a lot of space here in the laundry room, but just I could use it to pose and display many awesome G.I. Joe figures, and it would look just perfect. And in a perfect world, I would have the Rambo figures to go with it, but that's a hunt for another day. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode at looking at 5 more forgotten 80s playsets. Like I said, this is number 5 in the series, and there's plenty more. The more researching that I do, and mind you, I use the word research very loosely because, yeah, I come from a place of my heart and nostalgia, and I'm not here to preach any gospel to you. I'm just here to talk about how great these toys were and how great they could still be. Anyway, with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you got something to say, please leave a comment. I love reading them, and I love getting back to everybody. And if you're new around here and you enjoyed this or any of the episodes that YouTube is recommending down here, please hit subscribe. And if you hit that little bell icon, you will be notified whenever there's a new episode. So, until next time, thanks for watching. Keep being rad and stay dorky.